Well, thanks guys for introducing me. And I know you probably have had many perspectives today through mental health, trauma, hope, coping strategies. So my perspective's a little bit different. I'm actually coming from the perspective of the role of being a mother, but also I have a passion for working with young children. I have all my life. I've worked with children for 45 years, but more importantly, I'm sharing with you today my experience of Columbine. And at the time, it was the deadliest high school shooting in US history. It was a massacre, but sadly, there've been many more and worse since. So I felt like it was important to share this with you. How many of you are familiar with Columbine High School? Okay, so most people are, because it was all over the news. It's weird to me. I told Ashley I might get a little emotional because even after 22 years, whenever I talk about it, I get emotional. So it's just a different perspective, but think about what happened. So I'll share that. Also share where I was, why, we don't really know, but different perspectives of before and after. So think about what happened when Kennedy was shot. Where were you? Anybody old enough? As old as me. Okay. So I was in first grade, and I remember it being on the news and my teacher crying. And it affected me for the rest of my life. I never forgot that moment. I can even remember the classroom because it had such an impact. So what we do, we remember. We remember those things, and they're very hard to forget. What about 9/11? Everybody probably knows where you were, what happened that day. You're never going to forget that. There's so many things, so many tragedies that happen that we don't forget those things. We always remember. And we remember how we feel and how we feel now, how we felt then, sad, anger, confusion, why someone would want to kill our president, why someone would want to blow up the building. But before that day, you might have felt safe or secure. And before that day, being a young child, everything was right with the world, but then things changed. And I remember as a child being confused. And I remember as an adult being confused about how could this happen? So I think I tell you to turn the slide. So like the girls said, my background is in child development. And so I'm kind of coming from that perspective too of how this affects children and how it affects us as we get older as adults. So at 11:20 a.m. on Thursday, April 20th, 1999, my administrative assistant got a phone call and she said, there's been a shooting at the school and my son ran home. And we both looked at each other and were like, why would he run home? And he lived across from the high school. And I said, well, go home, be with him, and then call me with details. So as the director of a child development center in Littleton, Colorado, my school backed up to Clement Park, which was where the high school was. So I did what hopefully any director or any teacher or any principal would do. I put my school on lockdown because we thought there was a shooter in the area. We thought there was somebody with a gun and it might be one of the first places they come to. So we locked the kids in, but it was time for the kids in the morning to go home and time for the kids in the afternoon to come to school. So we had to get the kids out as fast as we could. We had to stop the parents from coming to the school for the afternoon session. And we had to lock our babies and infants in our rooms. And we had to keep them safe. So once we heard helicopters flying and ambulances and trucks and fire trucks and SWAT team, like something's going on here. So I turned on the TV, rolled the card out, turned on the TV, it was President Clinton. And then we knew it was bad. Whenever the president comes on and talks to you about something, it's bad. So we realized that the nightmarish details were to come, and they were unfolding in front of our eyes, that it was 2 student shooters in the school, that 8 of my teachers had kids at the high school. So they ran out, ran across the street, obviously couldn't get into the school, but they went to the elementary school across the street. And then It was just hard to believe that this could be happening in our town, in our neighborhood. So I was sharing with Ashley, I'm sorry, like I say, I get a little emotional. We weren't Littleton Public Schools. And I know that was kind of a misnomer because everybody thought, oh, it's Littleton. Well, we were unincorporated Jefferson County, which it just hit me today. I'm like, aren't you guys Jefferson County? So it kind of hit me that, yeah, we weren't even part of Littleton Public Schools. We were only 2 high schools in kind of a small rural area along the foothills. And one of them was Columbine, one of them was Chatfield. So we're thinking, why? Why? How could this be happening? And then it started to creep in. Who's to blame? Why could this happen to us? How could the parents let this happen? How could the teachers let this happen? How could our community let this happen? So all those things are rushing through our minds. But then, and you can go ahead. We have to think about why. That's what we don't know. And to this day, we really don't know why. But it's the hardest thing to answer. And sometimes we never have the answer. So we're going to come back to that. So what happened that day? And you can go on. What happened that day? So Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, they decided to attack the school. They've been planning this for a while. There were red flags. I think that's why a lot of us parents were upset, because there were red flags. They had been in trouble before. They had had issues. They had tried to blow up things before. There were just lots of red flags. So they decided to attack the school. Those who ran out were safe, which was my admin's son, which we were grateful for. But those who stayed, ran up to the library, they weren't so lucky. So there's some facts I'm going to give you. It's not to make it sound bad, but it was. But just some facts. So there were 12 students that were murdered, 1 teacher. 10 students were killed in the school library, where then the 2 boys committed suicide. 21 additional people were injured by gunshots, gunfire, and gunfire from the police. Another 3 people were injured trying to escape. And at the time, like I say, it was the worst shooting in US history. And it inspired more deadly shootings. Now, again, I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just sharing facts. And unfortunately, Columbine has become the byword for school shootings. But it wasn't as worse as it could be. They had devised bombs in the school. They had their own demise. They weren't in the school for very long. And they had planned to blow up the whole school. They found bombs later. They had weapons, and I'm going to read these off. I don't even know what they mean. Intratech Tech 9 Mini, High Point 995 carbine, Savage 67H pump action shotgun, Stevens 311D double barreled shot, I know this one, shot off shotgun, 99 explosives, and 4 knives. Okay, that was a nightmare for our community to hear. How in the world did these boys get a hold of things like this and want to blow up their school? In addition, there were several homemade bombs. 2 of these were placed in the cafeteria, powerful enough to kill or seriously injure all people within the area, although they failed to detonate, thank God. Their cars in the parking lot were made into bombs that failed to detonate. There were other locations away from the school. 2 bombs were set up as a diversion, and 1 was partially designated. Even though the motive is unclear, they had been planning this for a year. So a lot of facts came out afterwards. And again, there's no judgment here, but the police were slow. The SWAT teams were slow. They had no idea what was going. Remember, this is a town like yours where this doesn't happen. How could this be happening? So everything was in slow motion. So my boys were at their schools, 1 in elementary school, 1 in middle school. Everyone was on lockdown. And all I could think of as a parent was, I just want to go get my boys and I want to go home. But I had to take care of the babies. I had to take care of the toddlers. I had to take care of those families that were in my care and keep them safe until they could be back in their parents' arms. So these are facts, and the facts are what they are. And that's what we have to think about, what we can do about that. So where were you on the day of your school shooting? How many of you were in the school? How many of you had students in the school? How many of you were associated with the school in any way? So some of us were really involved and some of us were not, but it still is a tragedy to our community. And more importantly, we think about, how are you feeling? How'd you hear about it? News? You hear about it on the news? You were there in person. Maybe you didn't hear about it for a while, or a friend told you, someone told you. So we think more about, how did we feel? So I remember on that day, it was a beautiful day. And that's the thing that's still strange to me. 22 years later, I can remember the exact day. I can remember the exact details of that day. But I think about, it was such a beautiful day, and it started out just a typically quiet day. But then that feeling of shock and disbelief and anger and dismay, but mostly fear. It really was fear in that moment of the sadness that those kids and those parents and those teachers must be going through. It just hits you all at once that, wow, what must they be going through? And before the shooting, Littleton, like I say, was like here. It was small, it was peaceful, it was safe. I mean, we always left our doors unlocked. The kids all played at the parks together, did things together. I was in Columbine High School every week. My kids were in the band, they were on the football team. My son was on a basketball team that was called Columbine Raiders. And my husband coached, and the coaches met together at Columbine. And we did so many things there, and we did so many things at the park. So we were in that area all the time. So I asked my boys recently what their memories were, what their feelings were. And they were shocked, but their biggest shock was that they thought their town was pretty perfect. They thought where they grew up was ideal. They thought they were going to the best schools in the country. And they were great schools. So it shifted how they felt about their school. My oldest son was in youth group with Cassie Bernal. Her brother was his friend. And it shifted his feelings about God. It shifted his beliefs and his faith. And that saddened me. And it shifted a lot of the kids' beliefs and faith, because they all were in youth group together. So they all knew each other. So a lot of things brought up a lot of feelings. And I think it just has an impact that shifts you forever. So what my youngest son said, the basketball player, and he was in elementary school at the time. He was being mentored and coached by a freshman at Columbine High School who was an amazing athlete. And he really got close to him. And a year later, he committed suicide because he just couldn't take the pain. He couldn't take it that he survived and his friends didn't. So this goes on for a long time. And there's lots of feelings to deal with for a long time. So the question is, what do we do after? You guys are in the after phase. And a lot of times it's hard to determine what to do after. You come together. So what we did, I was the PTA president at the elementary school. So we came together, all the elementary school PTA presidents, and we housed the Columbine students at our high school at Chatfield, because that's actually where Dylan Klebold would have gone, but he was in the gifted program at Columbine. So my son was going to Chatfield. So we all came together and we housed the kids in the morning, all the kids from Columbine, because we wanted them to go to school. Not that it was going to feel normal.
Boys, come here.
Sorry, I don't think I did that. Is it okay? But yeah, so we housed the kids. So we fed them breakfast. We were there every morning. We were there to pray with them. We were there to support them. We were there, had counselors for them. And then the Chatfield kids went in the afternoon. And we did that till the school was ready. We had a big, huge sign we had put out front that said, "We are Columbine." And that was kind of the tagline for a long, long time. And we wanted those kids to feel included and welcome and taken care of. So we did that until the school was ready. One thing though that affected me a lot, my oldest was going to be in the band, and they had practice at Chatfield. And I went over one day to pick him up, and the whole school was open. And that really, I'll never forget that. That really bothered me. I'm like, it's only been a week. And these kids are vulnerable and they're at our school and we're just leaving the doors open. I know that it was students within the building, but you still have that feeling is like, this can happen again. Why are we just being, so nonchalant about this? We should be locking up the building and keeping it safe. So a lot of feelings came up. And we found that there was no simple answer of what to do, because you don't think it's going to happen to you. You don't think it's going to happen to your kids, and then the world gets in the way. So we think of gun control, less violent video games, less social media, or even, change, some kind of change. But we want that. We want change, but we don't want to change, or we don't know how to change. So that was the question we were asking ourselves, what do we do? So as I shared earlier, I've worked with infants and toddlers for over 40 years, and I find that middle schoolers are a lot like toddlers. It's like, let's just get them through in 2 years. They're going through a lot of changes. They want to be independent, but they're not quite ready. They're leaving the nest, but you still want to hold them tight. And they want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be loved. They want to be respected, just like a toddler does. But we find that sometimes we're not giving that to them or what they need. And kids, no matter what age, they need someone in their lives, maybe someone other than their parents, to confide in, to talk to help understand them. And that's the hard part. Are we doing that? What are we doing after? So it's so easy to blame. Very, very easy to blame. I blamed the parents for a long time. I really struggled with, how could you not know your kids were making a bomb in the garage? Or how could you not know they were watching these violent video games, or that they were dressing the way they were when they went off to school? How do you not know these things? But Sue Klebold lived in our neighborhood. I didn't know her and I didn't know the family, but my teacher, one of my teachers did. She was their neighbor. Intact family, never saw any signs. And she didn't share her story until 17 years later, because that's how hard it was. And so it gave me a different perspective, because then I had the perspective as my kids got older of drug involvement, drug addiction. And not in a million years, just like Columbine, would I ever think that would happen to my kids. So it's a perspective that we don't always have because we haven't lived it. But once you live it, once you feel it, you start to understand other people's perspective. So it's easy to blame, but it's also easy to get information and find out the facts. It's very, very hard as a parent to feel like you didn't do a good job as a parent. And that's how you feel when things like this happen. That's how Sue feels. I can't even imagine how she felt, because to say that your son's a murderer, to say that your son, in my case, is a drug addict, that's a hard thing to admit. That's a hard thing to go through in your life. But you've got to get to the other side. So how do you get there? So you find people that have gone through these experiences. You find people you can talk to that have experienced it. That's one thing that was so hard for me. My husband was like, we didn't talk to anybody about it. Sue couldn't talk to anybody. How could she talk to anybody about it? She can't go up and say, oh, do you have a son that's murdered someone? Can I talk to you? It doesn't happen that way. But she did find kids that were suicidal. She did find kids that had this experience that she could talk to. She found out after Columbine that 2 years before, her son was suicidal. He wrote a letter saying that he was cutting himself and that he wanted to get a gun and kill himself. She didn't find that out until 2 years later. Cassie Bernal's mom didn't know she was dead until 2 days later. Those things should not be happening. We should be finding out these things beforehand. So there's many scenarios, there's many reasons. One thing that I think of a lot in my line of work, working with young children, is that this starts young. And it starts with brain development. 93% of children's brains are developed by the time they're 5. So the impact we have on those brains at a young age is so, so important, and it needs to be positive. The brain doesn't do anything with negative, but it lights up like a Christmas tree with positive input. And that's where it starts. But it also changes as they grow and they get older, it changes. And the middle school years are really hard on the brain. The reasoning part and the rational part of the brain doesn't even fully develop until they're in their 20s. So it makes you understand their behavior a little bit more. And a lot of times what we do, we don't think of those things, and then we only think of them when we see these behaviors come out. So we want to make sure we're talking to the kids. We want to make sure that we're finding ways to get into their brain, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. It's very hard sometimes because 15% of our youth have suicidal thoughts. But we don't always know that. We don't know that they're thinking that way. Maybe they go off to school and they seem fine. Or maybe they're with their friends. I wanted to give my boys independence. I wanted them to go off and be with friends. Their drug addiction didn't hit till college, but still, I was bothered by the fact that I didn't know. I knew I saw changes in their behavior, but I thought, well, they're in college. They're studying like crazy. I knew that my sons, they suffered from anxiety because they were in such difficult classes and they were high achievers, just like Eric and Dylan were. They were high achievers. They were perfectionists. That's how my boys were. I didn't think that anything about that. But then you see these behavior changes like, wait a minute, I should be paying attention here. I should be looking at what they're going through and talking to them about this. But it's difficult. The other thing that Sue shared was that once her son did become suicidal and dysfunctional, she knew they had depression, but he also coupled that with his friend Eric, who definitely had disturbing personality and disturbing behaviors. And it spiraled into events triggered at school. So a lot of times we want to just blame the kids at school for bullying, or we want to blame the parents for not, paying attention, or we want to blame the community. But a lot of times it's the brain. They have mental health issues that are hard to detect. They're hard to see. They're hard to know what to do. So triggering events at school like humiliation, and bullying, and defacing, and alienation just trigger the brain all the more to get out of this world, to get out of this pattern, to get out of this pain. So a combo of extreme homicidal vulnerability is what happens. I'm not saying, I know that it's a little different from what you've gone through because it wasn't as tragic, but it's still a tragedy because our kids are asking for help. They need attention in the right way. They need help figuring out what's going on in their brains. So we all feel that we know our kids better than anybody else, and we do. But there's no simple answers to know why they're not sharing their feelings with us or why they're not coming to us and they're going to other people. Dylan could have easily gone to somebody that could have supported him, but he found somebody that had the same thoughts as him, that had the same pain as him, that had the same depression as him, those same suicidal thoughts. So they made a pact. They figured this out together. But we want to make sure that we're giving kids the proper people to go to help them navigate the world, to help them understand what's going on in their brain. So even though, like I say, it may not be as great a tragedy, it shifts your idea of this could never happen here. And this won't happen again. Well, it could. And you want to be prepared for that. You can't ignore what the kids are trying to tell you. Anytime you see behavior changes, anytime you see those red flags, look at those, deal with those, listen to what the kids are trying to tell you. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we always want to try to control their behaviors or change their behaviors, but what we really need to do is just listen. Just listen to what they're trying to tell you. Be a good listener. That was one thing I had to learn the hard way. And I remember when I went to my son, I said, I'm here whenever you're ready. I'm here. That was a turning point. It wasn't me saying, you need help, you need to do this, you need to do that. It was like, I'm here when you're ready. And he was ready. They both were. And I have to say, they're 3 years sober and in recovery, and I'm very proud of them. But they wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't reached out for help, if I hadn't figured out this was a problem, if I hadn't figured out what to do. We had to go to professionals. We couldn't do this on our own. Nobody can do this on their own. We went to professionals, we got help, and then we were there for them. And that's what these kids need. They need you to know what to do. They need you to have the resources. You have to be ready to go, ready to help. So you've got to give them a future. You have to let them know there's a future. A lot of times when kids make a mistake, they feel so bad that they can't move forward. You've got to let them know it's okay. It's okay. We're going to move forward together. And they need mental health support. You all know that. You've probably heard that all day long, but it's so true. I don't think I would have even thought that if I hadn't gone through it. I needed mental health support. And services obviously aren't as apparent as they should be or be as available as they should be. You have to research it. It's not the easiest thing to do. I was lucky because both my husband and I said, we can't solve this problem. So we need some help. And once we got counseling and we found the right person and the right way to go, it was fine. But it's hard sometimes to find the right way to go and the right person to talk to. But we should always be thinking about the children, what they're going through, put ourselves in their shoes, give them the attention they need now before it becomes a destructive behavior. So I'm going to read something from a teacher to finish this out, because I only had half hour, which is probably good because I can talk for a good 3 hours. So you guys are lucky. So this is from a teacher. Yesterday, I shut down class for about 5 minutes early and told my students I wanted them to just sit and talk to one another. Several of them immediately opened their laptops and began navigating to their favorite computer game. Sound familiar? I said, no laptops. I want you to have a face-to-face conversation now. It's changed. The world has changed. Kids don't have face-to-face conversations anymore. They get online. That's another reason why it's very difficult for them to navigate their world, because they're hearing things and opinions about themselves and others that don't make any sense. So after a collective groan, I observed something both wonderful and alarming. For the next few minutes, a couple of tables came alive with conversation. They looked at each other in the eyes and talked with great enthusiasm and interest. It was beautiful to watch and listen to. However, many students were deflated. They did not know what to do without some sort of entertainment from a device. A couple of them put their heads down and avoided eye contact with anyone. Well, that right there would be an activity that would kind of show you maybe some of the issues that some of the kids are having, way beyond what you thought. I share this story as a wake-up call for parents, grandparents, and guardians, teachers, anybody. It's tragic to me that a large percentage of today's youth do not know how to have a real conversation. But it's not their fault. It is our responsibility as adults to lead by example and hold our kids accountable, even when it comes to simple things like, let's just have a conversation. Unplug every day, talk and listen to your children. And that goes for every single age. Getting lost in a device or anything, maybe it's not just a device, maybe it's something else, but getting lost in it and not connecting with people does not help them cope and overcome the things they're going through mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. All it causes is isolation and depression. They need relationships. They need you. And the teacher says, I plan on doing this again tomorrow. So I love that because that kind of puts it all in perspective. They need that. I mean, even when we do research on the brain with infants, if they're stuck in front of a TV, nothing happens in the brain. But the minute someone talks to them, a human being, everything lights up. It's the same thing for our kids as they get older. It's the same thing as they're going through puberty and they're changing and they're growing. Their brain is going through a lot. So we have to make sure that they have human connection. They have human conversations. They have somebody they can trust and talk to and get those feelings out, even if they don't know what those feelings are, even if they don't know what they're going through. And then you can connect with others. One of the things I always asked my boys was, talk to me. But when I would suggest, hey, let's go talk to a therapist or a counselor, why would I want to talk to a stranger? But when they finally were in rehab and in recovery, that was the first thing they said was, I'm so glad I talked to somebody. So talk to those kids, get involved in their life and their world and help them understand they're not alone. They're not isolated. They're not alienated. Even if they're hearing that from other students, you're there for them. Any questions? I know that was pretty heavy for the end of the day. Sorry about that. And I'll be around. Yes. Yeah. Cassie was the student that was in the library that when the boys asked her if she believed in God, she said yes. So, and then they shot her in the head. So Cassie went to our church, and she was in our youth group, and she went through a lot of rough times as a teenager, but she found God, she found the youth group, and she was doing amazingly well. And so there was a book written. It's called She Said Yes. And it's just one of those stories that came out pretty strongly afterwards, because she stood up for herself, and it didn't really matter to them. But if you look at it from their perspective, they planned to do this no matter what anybody said. So it was just one of those stories that had come out, and they were a family in our neighborhood, and my son was Chris's friend. So it was just a powerful, powerful story. And there were many other stories, but that was just one that came out, and the mom wrote a book about her daughter. Oh, he was asking who Cassie Bernal was. But I'll be around. I know they're going to do a little skit, and then I'll be around if anybody wants to talk.